Hello, lovely people. Sorry, it's been a little while since my last vlog. Life just, gets in the way, doesn't it? Every so often. We are up to, in the Jesus Storybook Bible, the present, which is about Abraham and Isaac. And it's a funny old one to read to your kids because it's about a loving father who goes on an adventure with his son um, in order to kill him, in order to sacrifice him, because God asked him to, and he was willing to. So yeah, definitely not like a sweet bedtime read, but it's important to look at the tricky bits of the Bible and not just the uh, warm and fuzzy bits. And so I guess firstly, I made a ram out of risotto, which is all kinds of wonderful. It just felt easier to make the ram to put the ram on the wood that was about to be sacrificed rather than make a boy out of food that was going to be sacrificed. Yeah, maybe I wimped out, but maybe it's for the best. So a risotto ram, which looks like a wasp, I would say it probably looks like a wasp, but it doesn't matter because if it helps the kids learn, it helps the kids learn. And yeah, so I obviously struck by, whew, what would I do if God asked me to do anything crazy? If God asked me to move house, if God asked me to lay down my job, if God asked me to move to a country, if God asked me all kinds of things, if God asked me to give up a child, because he was testing my obedience, I'm a little bit worried that my obedience would turn up as a big fat no. And I know people that have lost a kid as well, and it's just not an easy concept at all, is it? But God knew that Abraham was a man that could be tested. And the thing I love about the Abraham Isaac story, obviously the parallels of, you know, our loving father was willing to sacrifice his own son, so that he might be glorified and so that we might be able to spend eternity with him. And there wasn't a quick fix to make sure his own son didn't die. His son did die for us, and I think that's important to keep remembering that God turned his back on his own son. God let his son die at the hands of a horrible regime and a horrible death. Even though Jesus pleaded, please can we not do this kind of thing. And so I think it's always important to come back to the gospel and the fact that God has not only asked this of Abraham, but he's gone through it himself. And the sacrifice that takes our place is of course Jesus, which is just all kinds of mind-blowing, amazing. I think the thing that strikes me with Abraham is his willingness to trust God. God had said to Abraham, you will have a multitude of children and children's children, and offspring will come from the line of Isaac. And so either God's a liar, or there had to be another sacrifice, or God was going to bring Isaac back from the dead. Abraham just trusted in the big picture. He knew that God had said this massive thing, you're going to have a kid, and from that kid is going to come multitudes of people, and from that line is going to come Jesus, and then we're all going to get adopted into that family. And so he's given him this great big promise, and then it happens. They have baby Isaac in their 90s. And so he trusts that what God said first doesn't matter about the day to day, because God has said this massive promise overall, like the bigger story, the bigger picture. And I think that's encouraging and challenging for me and for my kids, just to remember the promises of what God has spoken, of what God has said will happen, and speaking truth to my kids and saying, this is the big picture. This is what God is doing with history, with letting people know about his kingdom, with spiritual blessings, with spiritual gifts, and with storing up treasures in heaven. This is the massive picture. And then here's today. And God cares about today, but today is just this big compared with what the massive story is. And I think that is a huge encouragement for me, and a huge reminder of something to teach my kids. I just wanted to read something from this very annoying book by Jenny Pollock. I read it recently and was just a bit annoyed, really, because I wanted some warmth and encouragement and comfort. And I did get that, but it came with a bit of a slap or a bit of a kick up the backside. Yeah, basically ended the book and needed to repent of some thinking, some trust issues, some heart stuff. Give it a read if you want a bit of a slap. Anyway, so I just wanted to quote this bit because she's talking about Abraham. And she said that Abraham's faith in the big picture meant that he was able to obey God in the present. His faith in God's long-term plan meant that he surrendered the short-term one. He gave up the son he could see on the assurance of a promise that he could not see. That is real faith. And I've read it probably about 6 times today. His faith in the big picture meant that he was able to obey in the present. I think my encouragement, my challenge is, what am I holding on to that is so short term? It's so minuscule. It might hurt, might be unfair, might be unkind, might be real pain. But what is short term that I am looking at, this tiny little thing? What am I holding on to that is so for today, as opposed to the massive picture of what God is doing in my heart, what he's doing in my kids' heart, what he's doing in my family, in the church, where I live. And I guess I just want to be part of his big picture and the big story and not get caught up with just the day-to-days, whilst knowing that God cares about the day-to-day. Hopefully that is an encouragement to you. And if you want to check out my ram stroke wasp, then have a look on Instagram. Okay, bye.